Hi, my name's Kim. I'm a licensed and nationally certified Chinese medical provider, and I'm a Taoist practitioner. Today, I'm going to introduce you to the I Ching. I'm back in the Pacific Northwest, and it is literally freezing out here. It's like 19 degrees. I'm pretty cold. And, that's a big difference from where I was a week ago, which was in the desert. So you might be asking, okay, so what does the environment have to do with the I Ching? I'm going to share that with you in this episode. But before we do that, hey, I've got my winter wellies on, which means I can still play in this water, even though it's freezing. And you know what's crazy? Playing in puddles, that just never grows old. I had to come inside. It's freezing out there. And then to make matters worse, it started sleeting. So it's still 19 degrees down here, but somewhere in the upper atmosphere, it's warm. So there's now just ice on all the roads, on everything. A little cold for me. Let's go back to the I Ching. One of the first questions that's asked a lot of times is, who wrote the I Ching? I was reading this great book by Linda Javin is how I think you pronounce her name. I'm not completely sure, but it's called The Shortest History of China. It's an easy to read book. Her narrative is really engaging. She hits on all these super amazing highlights of Chinese history. And if you're interested in her book, check out my website, best-acupuncture.com. My favorite books, you're going to find her book there with a link to how you can purchase it. And you're going to find a lot of other books on Chinese history or on your health. Okay, so I was reading her book. What did I like about it for this discussion? She had this amazing little diagram of time. And when you're curious about, when did they write the I Ching, getting a feel for time is super helpful, and getting it in a visual makes it even better. So 2.5 million years ago to 10,000 years ago is the Paleolithic era. 10,000 years ago, you know what happened then? That's when we think the Great Flood happened, somewhere around 13,000 to 10,000 years ago. And between 10,000 to 2,000 BCE, that's when you see all the gods, and there's all the myths, and gods are walking the earth during this period. And then the next period that we have is the ancient period. This is going to be the period that's most important to us, and that's going to be 2070 BCE all the way up to 221 BCE. And that 221 BCE, that marks a point in time when China, for the first time ever, is unified under one country, and they are now being ruled by emperors. The next period is going to be the imperial period, and that covers the full timeline of rule by emperors in China. So 221 BCE all the way up to 1911, when the last of the Qing dynasty falls and the last emperor is forced to leave the Forbidden City. And that is the end of the emperors. And then we're back to modern times. We had the Republic, then we had Mao. And so let's go back. Let's go back to that ancient era that starts at 2070 BCE. And that's with the Xia dynasty. And then after that, we have the Shang dynasty, which is about 1700 BCE all the way up to 1070 BCE. And here's where we start to see who wrote the I Ching that we're using today. And that's going to be King Wen. So King Wen, he is going to be the founding king of the Zhou dynasty. And here's the interesting thing with the Zhou dynasty. King Wen was actually being held prisoner by the last of the Shang dynasty rulers. When I say prison, you're probably thinking this. In reality, it looked more like this, where the Shang King was able to capture the oldest son and they hold them as prisoner and they treat them really, really well. They're holding them as a deterrent. They would only kill them if the Chou King invaded. They call the last ruler the Tyrant King, and so everybody wanted him overthrown. But King Wen was being held for about 7 years. And during that time is when he organized the current structure to the I Ching that we use today, so the 1 through 64 hexagrams. Here's a question that I didn't even think about asking. Is there more than one I Ching? Guess what? The answer is yes. Who would have guessed? There's more than one book of divination. To my little Western mind, that didn't make sense, but let me tell you a little bit about some of these other I Ching books. So in ancient times, there's reference to two other I Chings, and guess who wrote those? The mythological individuals that were in the Neolithic time. So during the time of the gods. And one of them that that structured a different I Ching was Shen Nong. And you remember in my episode on Kokopali that Shen Nong is one of the 3 sovereigns of ancient China, one of the demigods of ancient China, brought in the harvest, brought in irrigation, plays a flute, and now also did a separate organization of the I Ching. They say his I Ching started with metal, so it started with a mountain. The other one is the Yellow Emperor. So the Yellow Emperor is one of the emperors from this ancient time, this Neolithic time, and they say that the Yellow Emperor also organized a separate I Ching, and his I Ching started with earth. So there we have 3 I Chings. The only one that we have today is King Wen's version. Well, that really shocked me when I found out that there's really more than one organization of the I Ching. And then when I was working with different Taoist groups, guess what else? I found out that there's more than one organization in the different groups. So the 64 hexagrams, they stay the same. You know, their names, their meanings, they stay the same. But the organization structure can be different based on how somebody's looking at the world or what it is that they are trying to understand about the world. So not just one I Ching, there's more than one. And even today, there's more than one. Divination. Isn't that really why you picked up the I Ching in the first place? And here in the West, we think of divination, we think of fortune telling, we think of our future, we think of fate. And so I'm going to share with you one of the ways that you can use the I Ching. And remember, we talked that there's like more than one I Ching book out there. And so there's more than one way to use the I Ching. This is a way that I see most common. And so let me share that with you and see if you can use those same concepts as you're starting your journey with the I Ching. One of the first concepts is, what does divination mean in the I Ching? Because we have a very predestined, fatalistic fortune-telling idea with the I Ching. So where does free will come in? And where does free will come in with any fortune-telling? The I Ching isn't telling you your fate or your fortune or your predestination. So remember at the beginning of this episode, I was like, hey, let's talk about environment. I'm going to tell you what environment has to do with the I Ching. Well, up here in the Pacific Northwest, it's freezing. And so I'm dressing in all winter clothes. And then I was down in the desert where it was nice and warm. And I was able to wear my summer clothes, shorts, and that was really amazing. Environment. Adjust for what's happening in the environment. I could have worn my winter clothes down in the desert and I probably would have had a heat stroke. Or I could run around in my shorts up here and I'd probably freeze my legs off. Your choice, right? It's your choice to do whatever you want, and that's free will. Understanding what the environment is gives you the opportunity to change your behaviors so that you can navigate through whatever the environment is to better benefit yourself. So there's 3 movements. You can either move forward, you can stand still, or you can retreat. And by understanding what the environment is, you can understand if you can move forward. And if you can move forward, you can get insight on what might better help you as you're moving forward. You can stand still and you can wait for the environment to change, or you can say, hey, that environment's not working for me. I need to retreat. And to look at it from just a purely environment perspective, think about the fires that happened this summer. Well, that environment is an environment to retreat from. You're not going to win in going into a forest fire retreat. So that is how the I Ching is used, is to give you an idea of what the environment is. You've got 64 hexagrams. They talk about 64 different types of energetics. And you can look at those energetics and you can make a determination on how you're going to move forward with whatever the energetics is. And the reality is, I always say it's like getting insight from another really wise person. So it's like having this mentor to help you with this really specific question. And yet, we are blind to ourselves. So even though you've got a mentor that's giving you help, you might still not hear them because 1, it's inconvenient. 2, you don't want to hear them. 3, you were planning on doing something else anyways. And you can, if you keep your readings and then you look back at them afterwards, you can get a really better insight into who you are, where you're hard-headed, where you're flexible, where you're weak, where you're strong, and maybe that can help you better navigate your world in the future. So when you're looking at the I Ching, environment, think of environment. You have the free will to make whatever decision it is you want. And what the I Ching does is, like your mentor, it just gives you some direction on what they see is coming up and what you might want to think about doing. I mean, it can literally tell you, right now is a time to stand still, or right now is a time to retreat, or right now is a time to move forward. And you don't have to follow it. And if you don't follow it, then see what happens and see if you learn something from that. Thank you for coming out and listening to this brief introduction on the I Ching. And you know what? Keep on spending as much time as you can learning about all these different wonderful tools that you can use to help you continue to have a wonderful life. And until next time, I will catch you on the other side.